This photo, by the way, is a photo I took in Perth, in WA. One of the gas companies has a few Toyotas which are fueled by hydrogen, and they actually have a hydrogen fueling station. I think this is more for show and demonstration rather than for real application. And we've also heard and seen a number of hydrogen buses around the countries and a number of hydrogen fueled cars, not in large numbers, but they actually have been developed and they do exist. The promise of hydrogen, as I said, fuel cell has got a higher efficiency, but there will be some emissions in the manufacture of the hydrogen and during the compression and transportation of hydrogen. Also, hydrogen vehicles with fuel cells that don't have the noise that internal combustion engines and no vibrations. That's good. And also, hydrogen has a good energy density, certainly better than an electric battery. Having said that, if we think about a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle, it's an electric vehicle plus, if you like, and this plus includes hydrogen fuel tanks and the fuel cells. But then the fuel cell actually converts the energy into electricity, and then the electricity goes into the electric motors, and then we have all the components of the electric vehicle. So this is one of the issues associated with hydrogen. There are more energy conversion processes and more components, including quite a sophisticated and heavy and expensive fuel tank, which we'll talk about in a minute. As usual, please feel free to stop me if there's something you want to explore further or talk about a little more. And if we compare the energy flow, if you like, in an electric vehicle compared to the hydrogen vehicle, we'll see that the electric vehicle just converts, hopefully, renewable energy, which is transported to our home, or preferably the solar that we generate in our home. It's stored in a battery, in the car battery, and then goes into running our car. And overall, if you look trip efficiency from the electricity generation to the car is something in the region of 70 to 90%, or even further, even higher than 90%. If we think about the hydrogen car, we have these extra processes. We need the electrolysis process to generate the hydrogen, and then we need to compress and liquefy the hydrogen to convert it, to store it, and then we need to apply it to the vehicle, and then store it in the vehicle, and then we have the fuel cell, and then the electric battery, and then finally it drives the car. And overall, again, we'll end up with an efficiency of, let's say, 30% compared to 80%. That's one of the drawbacks of hydrogen vehicles. It makes them obviously more expensive and also more complex, shall we say. So this is a summary of the comparison of the two technologies. Both of them don't pollute the local environment. Both of them are quiet, but certainly the hydrogen vehicle can be fueled more quickly and can have a longer range compared with the electric vehicle.
Wasim,
yeah.
How are they for weight? Because compared with electric vehicles?
Well, this is one of the issues. I mean, in theory, they could be lighter, but because you need a hydrogen tank, I mean, you'll have much smaller battery component in a hydrogen car, but you're replacing it with a hydrogen tank and a fuel cell, which will add to the weight, but they're certainly lighter than the typical electric vehicles from that point of view. And this slide that's on the screen now compares how we can store the energy on board a vehicle. And here we're talking about a typical diesel or fuel, a liquid fuel vehicle with a hydrogen vehicle and an electric vehicle in terms of the storage. We're comparing the energy needed for a 500-kilometer trip in all three cases. And as you can see, if we use liquid fuel, we need something, including the tank itself, which weighs something in the region of 43 kilograms and has a 46 liters to get the 500 kilometers. If we go to the hydrogen, the hydrogen itself is this little blue bit, which is only 6 kilograms in weight, but we need a tank which will make the overall weight 125 kilograms. And the volume becomes 260 liters, including the actual tank. The volume of hydrogen is big, but its weight is very low. As we know, hydrogen is very light. This compares with even bigger weights and volumes for the electric car. So an EV for the 500-kilometer trip will typically have batteries which will, some of them nowadays, go up to a ton in weight. This one, the 500K, needs 830 kilograms, and it will need 670 liters in volume. Maybe this gives a bit of an idea of what we're comparing. Okay. Well, I think as a result of that, I think we can conclude that, at least for the time being, hydrogen vehicles are not going to continue, because obviously we're seeing millions and millions of EVs being generated, and the technology improving so rapidly through volume production, and hydrogen is taking a back step. And as we'll see, that's even the case for trucks and other larger transport applications. Of course, if we really want to have more sustainable transport, we have to think about walking and cycling and using public transport. And I'll just tell you, I've just come back from the city. I had a meeting in the city, and I always take the bus to the city. But today, because I was in a bit of a haste to get back early, I ended up taking the wrong bus. I ended up taking about twice the length, the Tea Tree Gully, the Tea Tree Plaza, as I usually do, because I love using the O-Bahn, but today the O-Bahn, because I took the wrong bus, left at Paradise and had a long trip around the northeastern region and ended up in Tea Tree Gully half an hour later. So, but I love using buses, particularly. I think we're lucky to have the O-Bahn in the northeastern region. So also, I think alternative communication methods have become a reality, and what we're doing now is a good example. And it's more important when we think about the many millions of people around the world, or even more than that, who are actually working from home for at least part of the time and saving on time and on fuel and on emission through working from home and having lots of virtual meetings and virtual conferences. And then if we have to travel, we certainly need a smaller vehicle, a hybrid vehicle or an EV. And we use alternative fuels. And the final thing is we also can, if we wish, sequester our emissions of our vehicles through various resources. Jock, your hand is up. You want to comment?
Yes, it is, Wasim. I'm not sure if we discussed this last time, but when it comes to electric vehicles, is there a minimum size? Because if you go too small, I guess you're not going to get much out of the. You're going to have a small battery, and you're not going to get much out of it. Is that right?
Are you talking about the distance it travels or the size of the
No,
car? Because that's
I guess I'm talking. Yeah, I'm talking about the range.
the
If you
range.
have,
Okay.
if you have too small an electric
Yeah,
vehicle, you have to have a small battery, I
you-
guess,
you're
and, and
absolutely
there,
right.
and
I
therefore the
think,
range will be lower,
yeah, I
smaller.
think most available vehicles at the moment, we are talking about typically a minimum of 400 kilometers for the range. And for that, you need these, something like 600 or 700 kilograms of batteries.
But
Uh,
I was also going to say, by the by, when you got the wrong bus, were you tempted by a bus that said Paradise?
no, the bus said Tea Tree Gully
All right, being
via the
silly.
O-Bahn,
I'm
but
being stupid.
no, unfortunately, no. No, this is another story I can tell you. When we came to Adelaide 33 years ago, my wife wanted to live in paradise, but well, we went there and didn't like it.
No, it's not. It's not great.
Yeah. Uh, right. No, actually, it said Tea Tree Plaza via the O-Bahn, but it left the O-Bahn halfway, unfortunately. And I've done this before, but I didn't never learn. I was in a hurry and I thought I'd save time. Anyway, so this is just an idea about mobility, and there have been studies, particularly in Europe, that show that younger people are more comfortable with, if you like, the shared uh, public transport options, and but us, the over 45s, love our vehicles and love to have our own private car, and we use less public transport and less, uh, sharing and micro mobility and so on. And it's good to see that it says here 7% still have use their bikes and use micro mobility, but these numbers are a lot higher with the younger generation, which is hopefully promising. And this is something I've noticed in Adelaide. We are a lot more insistent on having our own cars and using our own cars, and even using them to travel to work than the Sydney and Melbourne, if you like. Maybe because we have shorter distances and less efficient public transport, but that's something I've seen many numbers that show that. Obviously, in city travel, we have a number of options. There was a period where bikes and electric bikes were fashionable, and I don't know, I feel as though the scooters seem to have lost some of the popularity they had even 2 or 3 years ago. And more people are going for electric bikes nowadays. I don't know if you agree with that, but I'm aware of so many people who are enjoying their electric bikes, either to go to work or even a lot of them for leisure. And especially if there is a couple with one passionate cyclist, at least the other member of the couple can accompany them and cheating with their electric bike. Buses. I don't know if maybe many of you know that in South Australia, a little while ago, I'm talking about the end of March here. This is an article I've copied the front page of. which says that, and this is dated the 31st of March of this year, we have ordered 60 electric buses for our public transport in Adelaide, which is not a bad start. And I don't know if everyone is aware of that, but this is happening, and you'll see in a minute, it's even that and other orders have led to the local manufacture of some electric buses in Australia. If we compare transport emissions, if we look at the different modes of transport, you can see the difference here. You can see here we're using Victoria as one of the worst case scenarios because they're still relying a lot on brown coal for their electricity. Sorry, this is a normal. No, this is a Victorian electric car. This is a Tesla, and then we go to the motorbikes and the trains and the trams and the buses, and then electric bikes. And what happens when we use the electricity we generate ourselves or use green power? Obviously, the emission will be zero then. So you can see there's a lot of options that we have. And as soon as we start sharing, the numbers really drop quite strongly. And it's even better if we use our own electricity generated from our own homes or offices. Freight emission. I thought I had a slide, maybe it'll come later, about the Volvo factory that's being established in Australia for making electric buses. We'll see, maybe I missed it, or I'll see when it comes up. So if we think about freight, you can see the options that we have in terms of the emissions. Obviously, air freight is the worst, followed by trucks. And you can see how much less emissions we produce when we talk about shipping with bulk carriers and oil tankers and containers. So you can see how much difference this makes. This is to move a ton of load for 1 kilometer. These are the values in emission. Okay, so obviously the more bulk shipping we do, the better. Unfortunately, I've been told that in Australia it costs more to use shipping around the country than to use trucks. It costs more to bring things from China to Adelaide than to bring something from Perth to Adelaide by ship. I don't know why this is, but that's the reality. If anybody knows, please tell me why this is, but that's how it works. Oh, there it is.
Wasim, I wondered about why you didn't have any figures for trains, for shifting freight by train.
I thought I had a figure which I mentioned earlier in the first talk, in last talk.
Sorry.
I'm pretty sure I did. If you like, we can go back to it, but
No, it doesn't matter.
all I can tell you, the figure I remember is that even though rail transport of freight does half the freight transport in Australia, it's only responsible for 4% of our total emissions. And obviously trucks are responsible for 20-odd%, 24 or 28% of our emissions.
It seems to me that one of the the bad things that happens in Australia is that everything is carted by truck.
Yeah,
I mean, it would be much better if there was a around the continent rail network that could carry freight. I guess, because and the same applies in America too.
yeah,
In the US, there's very little travel or carting of stuff by train.
yeah. And trucks, you need more roads and wider roads, and they damage the roads so seriously. And also, some of them get uh, tax incentives for using diesel. Anyway, that's another story, especially in mines and other places.
Perhaps, sorry to dominate here, but perhaps when it comes to the cost of carting freight by ship around the coast, um, some of the extra costs might be due to port charges, and also if you just take the material to the port, it then has to be transported to where it's actually
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
go to. And that, that obviously adds something.
But I've always been surprised that it costs less to get things from China than to get them from even, I think, even from Sydney or Melbourne. Anyway, you'd be surprised or otherwise to hear that we actually have a lot of electric trucks already happening in Australia, and a lot of them. There are also companies that convert conventional trucks into electric trucks and have facilities for changing batteries, literally with a forklift, as you'll see in a minute. So this is where actually I was probably wrong about manufacturing bus. There is a company that manufactures buses, but also the announcement that we heard in May said that Volvo is building trucks in Australia. I think it's in Queensland, if I'm not, my memory serves me right. And this is following a big order from Linfox to purchase 30 electric prime movers from the Volvo group. So now they're establishing a manufacturing facility in Australia. And let's see if we can get at least one of these videos just to give you an idea of what we're talking about. I think this guy is being a bit optimistic, holding the battery and putting it there. Needs a bit more than a pair of hands to do that. So I'm going to stop sharing this presentation and see if I can share the video with you. Share. Now, where is the... just excuse me for a second. I'm not sure if I've got the appropriate thing open. Let me just see if I can open it.
I might just share a few thoughts about the bus culture, coming from where I come from. I was born and lived in Paris for half of my life, or less than half of my life now. And in France, we do take public transport, particularly in the big cities, as something that, it's just part of a natural sort of cultural make, if you like. And I've noticed when I came here the huge difference of culture regarding the bus, for example, the anti-bus attitude here.
Yeah,
People hate buses, whereas I take the bus here quite a bit. And funny because the story you told, I got caught myself too one day. I just went on the X bus and went all the way up. But every time I catch a bus here, I realize that, all it takes is a little patience and something nice to read. But we need to move towards, it's a cultural issue. It really is, it's an attitude thing. And a lot of the things that you're discussing today are really culturally related. You know, everyone
You're
used to,
absolutely right.
you know, everyone used to their one car, and this is where, you know, it's like a philosophical discussion, really.
Long-haul trucking is here thanks to an
Can you see this?
innovation-based
Sorry.
Diesel trucks are being converted to run
Yeah.
on electricity instead, and it only takes a matter of minutes to replace the batteries.
Bikes, cars, buses, and now trucks are the latest all-electric rides to hit our roads.
Come your next parcel delivery, that truck soon might be an electric vehicle.
These cement trucks, the first of a refurbished fleet, running on massive batteries manufactured on the Central Coast by Genesis Electric.
It's taking diesel trucks that were diesel and turning them into full electric with a swappable battery.
Heavy haulers can switch out batteries in just 4 minutes. This charge and change station in Moorebank.
This is an absolute game changer, and it couldn't have happened 6 months ago.
New regulations helping more of these trucks hit the road, and they are proving popular. They are quieter and more comfortable to drive than standard diesel trucks, as well as cheaper to run.
We're using solar in the middle of the day because the batteries are here waiting to be charged.
Each truck can travel up to 400 kilometres on a single battery. That's from Moorebank in Western Sydney to Parkes in the Central West. Swapping batteries is simple too. There's 8 strategically placed charging stations across the country and more on the way.
This is engineered, developed, built here in Australia for Australian conditions, and we think that's the best solution for the transport industry.
Grace Fitzgibbon, 7 News.
I'll try and stop this. Have I stopped the sharing now?
Yeah.
Good.
Can I
Oh,
go back
you want to
to,
stop?
sorry, can I go back to Jean-Marc's point about the different attitudes here to probably everywhere over Europe, actually, to in relation to public transport. Now, of course, in big cities like Paris and London and actually many others, you have an underground, you have a metro that is, and this is the same applies in China and Japan too. So you have a very efficient train service that, so if you miss one train, you probably get the next one in 5 minutes' time. Here, of course, well, I'm not really excusing the attitude here, but the attitude here is that you'll probably have to wait for another half an hour or something for the next bus. So, I mean, the solution to this is something that the previous Queensland government started to institute. That is having 50-cent bus fares. And actually in Brisbane actually has a very good bus service. I don't know if people know it very well, because they have a dedicated track for buses. It's a bit like the Autobahn, I suppose. And so you can, if you live fairly close to one of the main bus stations, or one of the lines, you can actually get into town in Brisbane very rapidly. So, you know, it is an attitude, but it kind of needs a leap of faith by the authorities to make it that it is the normal thing to do. And one of the problems with Adelaide, I'm afraid to say, is that actually parking is very good. You can find parking in Adelaide relatively easily.
Yes, you're right. And also our distances are relatively shorter. John?
Sure.
You mean JD?
Yeah.
Sorry. In addition, in Brisbane, you have buses going in tunnels underneath the streets in the CBD and letting you off into, for argument's sake, the basement of Myers. And I was most impressed with that when we were up there. Also, something that Adelaide lacks is a transport hub in the city. If you go to Perth, the main railway station has got a bus station next to it, which is laid out just like a railway station with platforms, and the buses run down between the platforms. And that is a brilliant idea. Yeah. If you want to change from the Autobahn onto the train, you've got to walk a couple of blocks in Adelaide.
You're right. Yeah, Well, I don't know, but I think I tend to agree. There's a lot of social acceptance idea.
Yeah.
You know, people who can afford it prefer to drive their own cars rather than hop on a bus for some reason, which is
And
not the case in bigger cities.
No, but this is where the culture becomes a responsibility
Yeah.
for the individual. Sure, I completely agree that the 50 cents ticket, fabulous.
Yeah.
Putting the pressure on the state or federal, absolutely. But us as individual, there really needs to be a shift, a massive shift,
Well,
to really own the change.
well, we
And
have no excuse. We get free rides.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't even. I'm enjoying my pensioner's card massively. It's just I don't pay for anything now. It's great.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on. Right. Oh, there's the rail that we will be talking about a little bit. So rail freight uses 80% less energy than trucks per ton of freight. And as I said, it accounted for 4%. And there's a lot of activity in making railways even more energy efficient. Obviously, electrification has become important. And one of the new, if you like, trends in trains, particularly for use in cities, is to have the battery on the train and get it charged enough to run for several hours as needed, for the whole day, and then charging it overnight or when there's no rush hour or whatever. That's happening in a big way, rather than have all these great big wires all over the place that look ugly and use a lot of materials and waste a lot of electricity and lots of other materials. And certainly we have better motors, better energy efficiency. This point of, if you like, programming the trains so that they're always used to their best capacity and to be in the right places at the right times and using the railways more effectively. A lot of mathematicians have a great time doing all the scheduling and to optimize it so that we maximize energy efficiency. And of course, renewable energy and maximizing the utilization. And as I said, there's the onboard batteries. And you can see here how we don't fare very well compared with other countries in terms of, I mean, we have 50% of our freight, but we still have this 50%. Considering our distances, we should do more. You can see Canada is close to us. The Russians are very good at using trains, apparently. Air travel. Oh, well, what can we say about air travel? I suppose it all stopped during COVID, and it actually, there was a dip in the total emissions around the world, mainly because of air travel and obviously the reduction of all travel. But in 2024, 100,000 commercial flights were departing from airports daily and 5.85 billion seats. There were 3.7 aircraft movements 3.7 million aircraft movements, carrying 157 million passengers. That's just in 1 year. And a domestic flights emits around 400 grams per kilometer of CO2 per passenger, which is 4 times that of small diesel car with only the driver on board. So it's a lot more than cars produce. And I mean, these are just little bits that maybe we can remember. It would take 250 cars a year to achieve what a Boeing 747 emits in 24 hours of use. like trains, aeroplanes are only efficient when they are full, and certainly our airlines are getting a lot better at doing that, and somehow most of the flights we seem to get on are pretty full nowadays. A season of Formula One racing burns less fossil fuel than a single transatlantic 747 flight. So that's just to help the people that still like Formula One racing. And I think the aviation industry is the slowest in reducing their emissions, honestly. And the biggest activity is using alternative fuels. In other words, using synthetic and biofuels, but keeping the engines running on fuel. However, for smaller aircraft, there's a lot of activity in using electric and hybrid aircraft. This is
So I'm just going to make a small point there, Wasim.
Sure.
As far as I can see, one of the efforts that have been made to have alternative aircraft fuels is actually using CO2. In Europe, I believe in Norway, they actually they capture the CO2 and use that as a fuel, maybe mixed with something, I'm not sure, for aircraft. And now it's actually a bit of a swizz, because it still produces emissions, or they convert the CO2 that's captured into a fuel. It's a bit of a swizz, because it does produce emissions, but it's neutral. So it doesn't produce any more than is put in, or something like that. Have you heard of that?
I've heard of a number of research still activities to capture CO2.
Yeah.
I think the idea of actually using CO2 as a fuel is probably a furphy.
No, not CO2. It has to be converted to something else. Yeah.
Well, I know they convert hydrogen and CO2. They make ammonia and other fuels. But at the end of the day, you're still emitting CO2 when you're burning it.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, you're still emitting more than you're starting with. And this is again, some of the proponents of hydrogen talk about as a way of mainly justifying making more hydrogen out of oil. I'm not aware of actually CO2 being used by itself or as a net.
No, it's not used by itself.
No.
I'm in touch, or have been in touch in the past, with an organization in Europe that pushes not carbon capture and storage, but carbon capture and utilization. And one of the uses is to use CO2 actually as your base carbon material, that you can do all sorts of things with. You can make plastics out of it. You can So it's quite an active field actually in Europe.
I'll be very interested if you can find more details about that and particularly get some numbers in, how much is used and to what extent and what's the net benefit. This slide just shows us, well, first of all, I think there are calculators which we can use to work out how much we emit in any trip we make. But also, I put this slide to show how aviation emission could triple in the next 3 decades. And that's a bit of a scary thought, because even with if we use high efficiency improvements, that's still getting us this way, because certainly the trend of using flights and air freight, etc., is increasing all the time. And just as an idea, flying from Perth to London, Heathrow and back, I didn't see Adelaide, so I put Perth, generates 3,000, well, you can say more than 3 tons of CO2. There are 109 countries in the world where a person for a whole year produces less emission than we do in one trip, which is a bit scary. Right, aviation and shipping. There are lots of electric, developments of electric aircraft and also electric shipping, and more than 17% of global commercial aviation CO2 emissions could be addressed with lower carbon technologies, but also there are lots of developments of these little electric aircraft. And I put this because I'm sure some of you recognize the Rolls-Royce engines as being one of the leading in the world, and this is apparently this link, which you can see later, shows that they're breaking some speed record with an electric plane, which succeeded. And but also there's this movement of using aviation fuel from forestry waste and other forms of biomass. They have the potential to reduce net emissions by as much as 70 to 100% compared with fossil fuel. One way of accelerating that is to implement green corridors, trade routes, and lots of other ways of encouraging that. Certainly, I think my fear in the long run is for the larger aircraft fleets and some of the shipping fleets not bothering about converting and not doing enough about converting, and if you like, not have a transition plan to net zero, unlike lots of other sectors. Joe, did you have your hand up, or?
No, sorry, it stayed up.
Oh, right, that's fine. And there are various sustainable options for shipping. Certainly, these are some of the fuels being talked about: hydrogen directly or as ammonia or biofuels or methanol, but also there's some revival of using wind for long-haul sea faring, and of course having batteries in some of the ships is also another option. And certainly green ammonia has been mooted as one way of using hydrogen and converting it into a fuel which can be stored and used in long-haul shipping. Again, these are various examples of various small and large vessels that use electric transport. I think I may have one video to show. I'll try and show it. There are lots of links here which you can probably see once you get the recording or the slides. So I'll try and see if I can show this. Just as an example for, let me just see if I can share this now. Oh. I can't see the Zoom. I'll just give me 1 second to move this. And to share. Oh, there's no sound. This is a very short video. Certainly in Northern Europe, there are lots of these.
Brisbane would be ideal for that because Brisbane they use the ferries quite a lot in Brisbane.
Yeah. And also Sydney, they have lots of ferries.
Ah, yeah, of course. Absolutely.
Yeah. Where is my presentation?
What about the Popeye?
Yeah,
Uh,
why not?
An electric Popeye. That would be.
Yeah. Would be a bit of a novelty, wouldn't it? Okay. But there are certainly lots of companies trying at least various options, and certainly the electric battery option is becoming more and more realistic, and the ship can carry the weight without any difficulty. But obviously it takes a bit of time for these innovations to become reality, I guess. So if we move to the next slide. I thought we had to spend a bit of time talking about autonomous vehicles, and maybe I've already shared with you my wish that by the time I'm unable to drive, I'll have one of these autonomous vehicles being called to my house and me just jumping on it and going wherever I want. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but there are signs to show that it is happening. And again, there are lots of links here that you can look at in the future, but if I'm lucky, I'll try and see if I can find one of those and share with you here. Let's see what I've got first of all. It's not this one. Yes, now I need to share this.
So, how's your day going today? I'm sitting in the back of Google's
Sorry.
self-driving car in San Francisco. This is not.
You can't see this, can you yet? No, sorry. Not the one I wanted to show. Sorry about the delay. I'm trying to find something and having issues finding it.
When we get, when and if we get autonomous vehicles, the Uber model is probably quite a good way to go, because you could have autonomous vehicles available to everybody because they're moving around all over the place. Because I mean, one of the questions that arises when you're talking about vehicles is, can we continue to have the idea of every individual being able to have a vehicle, even if it's an electric vehicle, the materials needed to make those vehicles might be so much, the total that might be so great that it's not practical. It's not feasible for everyone to have a vehicle. Now that, of course, raises as with public transport, it raises an attitude problem.
Indeed. And again, we're talking about the social dimension here being so important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, in this society, there is still a lot of status attached to the vehicle you drive.
Exactly.
Not just in Australia, actually. It was also the case in New Zealand, and it's the case in
all the Western civilization, if you like.
Yeah. I actually have friends in New Zealand who almost their first question is, "What are you driving these days?" Well, I don't really care, actually, but they do.
Indeed, yes. Let me just see if I can. Oh, yes, I can share something. Which one is this? Which one is it? I think it's this one. And it's not really the one I wanted to show. Can you see something on the screen?
Mm-hmm. Flying taxis.
Flying taxis are going to happen. The question for me at the moment is rather, when is it going to happen, and not if.
This is a consulting company called McKinsey. Some of you may have come across, and they've done some study recently on this.
That are much smaller than today's aircraft, and that are going to be much more accessible. So they're going to land in your neighborhoods, and you might take a small car ride or a micro-mobility scooter ride to get to the vertiport, and you'll kind of go through there just like you do at a taxi stand today, and get on an aircraft that'll take you anywhere within, call it 100, 150 miles.
I think this is.
And this all will be one seamless experience. So
this should have been the next presentation, but it's on now.
Office, then the trip to the airport, the flight, and then from the airport into the city, and again the scooter for the last mile, maybe even one integrated ticket. All of these new vehicles are going to be fully electric. They're going to be much cleaner, locally, completely emission-free. Will it replace car ownership? I doubt it. I think it will be very complementary. Some of the timelines we see are very aggressive, and so I'm not quite as bullish as some of the public statements around how quickly we can wrap up the system. But in the medium to long term, 10 years out, I'm actually quite bullish. I think this is a mode of transportation that will eventually become quite frequently used, and it will be safe. It will be saving many of us time. It will be sustainable, and so there's a bright future to look forward to. I would say flying above the street is much safer than driving together with other people on a road. Technology-wise, I think the big two hurdles we have to overcome is, on the one hand, public acceptance. Like, are we going to be happy flying in an aircraft without a pilot? If something goes wrong, who do we hold accountable? How do we certify a system as good enough? I mean, those are important questions that a number of working groups are working on, but that'll slow us down in getting to fully autonomous aircraft. And so autonomous passenger flights, I'm less bullish on. I think it'll take us into the next decade before we will see that. And the evolution that could happen then is, first of all, the pilot is in the vehicle. Then you take the pilot out of the vehicle ground. But remember, one-on-one operation, one pilot or one vehicle, but remotely operated. And then over time, this ratio goes down. full autonomy, as in the vehicle is doing all the decision making and there is no remote observation and so on, I don't think that this will ever happen. We don't have it today in conventional air mobility, so all the planes are sort of supervised, right? And I think we'll see something similar. Are ready for flying taxi. Across geographies, more than 15 to 20% of respondents say they can definitely imagine change from the current mode of mobility to a flying taxi service. Passengers are spending more than 400 billion US dollars globally for taxi services every year. E-hailing adds another 100 billion US dollars on top of that. And if you now imagine that flying taxis can be able to capture some of this market share and becoming a real alternative to the taxi, the market opportunity is in the range of several billion US dollars. I'm kind of at the level where I think we're going to see in the tens of billions of dollars in market size globally in the early 2030s. But I could see it scale up much faster if we hit really all these unlocks right. By 2030, we will still see a sizable number of players out there, 10, 15, maybe even 20 players out there. Why? Because by 2030, the technology is still ramping up, but ultimately, I think there's a space probably for 5 or so players globally. Talking about the democratization of helicopter flight and ultimately the democratization of private jets. That's something that many people would not be able to afford if it weren't for these advanced air mobility vehicles, simply because taking a private jet is something that probably less than 1% or much less than 1% of the population will ever even do in their entire lifetime. It's going to be so important that this is not a toy for the rich, but something that is broadly providing value to people. I mean, there's many people in the world today that can't afford a plane ticket. But if we really get this industry to scale, this could be the same price of a taxi. I'm excited about the ability to be sustainable, inclusive, and see a ramping up of a brand new industry.
Sorry, Lynn, did you want to say something?
Yes. I noticed that this little flying vehicle came in there, and I'd have two views on that. One
Right.
is that it would be lovely to have one of those to get into and fly somewhere I wanted to. And the other one is I would absolutely hate for anybody else to be doing that, especially down my street or anywhere near me, flying past my roof. So I would have to just say, no, I wouldn't like it at all.
I understand. I fully understand what you're saying. Okay.
Does anybody remember the Jetsons on TV?
I guess so.
They lived like that. It was a cartoon. It was a cartoon series about 50 years ago, 45 years ago.
Okay, while we are sharing, let me try and show the video I wanted to show you about sharing about the self-driven vehicles, and this is something that's happening quite rapidly.
I'm sitting in the back of Google's self-driving car in San Francisco. This is not coming soon, it's actually here, with the app just opening up to the public. My favorite feature on this new self-driving car around San Francisco is, and it's everywhere around San Francisco. Impossible to go 5 minutes in this city without seeing one. It's also being used in Los Angeles and Arizona too. The best part, you don't need to tip. Companies have poured billions of dollars to get to this moment. Millions of jobs will be lost to AVs. That's autonomous vehicles. All right, let's see us go through this intersection. But I have so many questions I need answers to.
Uber is suspending its self-driving car operations.
A self-driving car being pulled over by police in San Francisco. Waymo driverless car clipped a bicyclist. Another crash involving Waymo.
Who is liable when a self-driving car crashes into someone? Can these cars be hacked? And what happened in a Chinese city where these cars have already become the norm? So there have been reports of people actually taking Waymos late at night and having sex in the vehicles because there is no human, so anything can go, right? That's probably not a good idea because there are cameras everywhere in the autonomous vehicle. Even when you call support, the first thing they're going to do is look at you and see you in real time. So can you see us right now?
We have cameras situated across the vehicle.
Download the Waymo app and it's just like ordering an Uber, except it's not. So I can already see it. It has my initials on it. Wow, it even stops for me. If this was a human driver, I could have just said, hey, it's me, and gotten in, but it's not that smart. So the only way to actually open the door is actually on the app. All right, so now I'm going to hit unlock. And it also says the car will only wait up to a couple minutes, and then there's a timer. So let's get in. Let's test this out.
Just calling because I received the notification from the vehicle. I'm just checking if everything all right.
Yeah, everything is fine. My friend was just getting in the car, and we're ready to start. All good.
Thank you for confirming that. If there's nothing else,
Are you in San Francisco?
the call has been routed to one of Waymo's satellite offices.
Oh, I see. So can you see us right now?
Yeah, we have cameras situated across the vehicle just to make sure that we have a good view of the riders.
Thank you so much. Have a great day. I'm going to hit start ride. Oh my God, this is so crazy. We just pulled into oncoming traffic and there's no human in the seat. And it's like crazy. My brain is going crazy right now. This is absolutely insane. And on top of all that, they play ambient music right when you get in, maybe to calm you down, but it's kind of working. Those first few minutes of riding as a passenger without a driver is crazy. It feels actually terrifying. We're going into the center of the intersection without a human, and you never in your life have you done something like this. Your brain is telling you, don't do this. But after probably 5 or at most 10 minutes, the opposite has occurred with me. I actually feel like I really trust this thing, maybe even more than a human driver, which is crazy to say, but that's kind of what's happening. I mean, you see how eloquently it navigates, you see all the data it has, and you kind of get really comfortable riding in this. And you can kind of start to see how quickly self-driving cars have the potential to take over the world. No way. Wow. You know, you would think it would go kind of slow and precautious, but it actually drives like a human driver, which is good. You don't want it to be too slow or timid. You got to kind of be a little bit bold when you drive. Otherwise, that could cause disturbances or accidents. And at all times, you can see whatever is within a perimeter of you. Way in front, way to the left. Like, it's actually fascinating that it can know how many cars are to the left. Look at this car, it's stuck in the middle of the intersection, but that doesn't stop us from going. We even maneuvered around it a little bit. It's also super interesting. So you know how sometimes you're sitting at a red light and you're getting a little impatient, so you ease your foot off the brake just a little bit before it goes green? This car does that. And there's no practical reason for it to do that, but my guess is it's doing that to mimic human behavior. Whether you're driving or sitting in the passenger seat, that's what we do as humans. The experience is meant to feel like you're with a human. Oh, it knows it needs to go to the right lane, so it's trying to decide when it can actually feasibly do that. Seems a bit stressed. So you see that? It's like we need to go to the right. Wow, this is crazy. We're not even fully in the lane because the bus was like kind of coming into our lane. So we kind of maneuvered out without hitting that guy. It's actually really fascinating. This thing is extremely smart. Waymo has huge ambitions. It's expanding fast with more than 700 cars on the road, and 300 of them are here in San Francisco. This is one of the many parking lots where Waymos will come to charge. And what's really cool is that they know to charge themselves. If their battery is low, they just stop what they're doing, head over to a charging station, and come and charge up. Waymo is now testing out vans known as Zeekr, which is more spacious and it could help people get around one day. But it also still faces a ton of challenges, like people vandalizing its cars or putting phones in front of them and around them just to mess with the vehicles and prevent them from doing their job. Google is not the only company in this space. See, Uber once saw autonomous vehicles as the future of transportation. They spent over $1 billion in developing self-driving technology, aiming to disrupt the ride-sharing industry. And the goal was clear: replace human drivers with AI. By the way, if you're enjoying this video, subscribe to this channel because I'm making more videos just like this about tech, economics, and more. But in 2018, an Uber autonomous vehicle struck and killed a pedestrian in Arizona.
A self-driving.
I'm just stopping to ask if you want me to continue or you've had enough of this.
It's really interesting.
Oh, all right, we'll continue.
But it's a first right here on our Valley Street.
That brought the challenges and risks into
I'm not sure how long it is, Wasim. It seems
It's
fairly
actually got another
Self-driving
7
system.
minutes
There
or
was a
something.
human safety driver
long. Okay.
6 minutes, 6.5 minutes.
Okay. The driver was ultimately charged with negligent homicide and would even be given jail time. In 2021, Uber sold its self-driving division to Aurora for a crazy $4 billion. Today, Uber still has an interest in autonomous vehicles, but it's taking a more cautious approach. And then there's Cruise. Cruise is a self-driving car company that was founded in 2013, but then acquired by GM in 2016 for a reported $1 billion. The company's valuation is in the billions now, and Cruise has made huge strides in autonomous vehicle technology, but it's also faced challenges, including a suspension of operations in October 2023 after its cars got into too many accidents. Cruise recently got to resume public road testing. So when you do something like take off your seatbelt in the middle of the ride, a voice comes on and says, hey, put on your seatbelt, this is for your safety. And if not, we may call for a human to come and check in on you and see what's going on. And it kind of reminds me of like being reprimanded by a teacher, like, hey, if you don't follow the rules, the principal is going to come. All right, but how does this actually work from a technology standpoint? Self-driving cars use sensors, cameras, and smart software to drive themselves on road. See, cameras see lanes, traffic lights, and other cars, while radar measures distances and finds things in the way. The software takes all this info and decides how to steer, speed up, and slow down, just like a good human driver would. These cars also connect to the internet and use GPS to find their way. This helps them get real-time traffic news, know about road conditions, and even talk to other cars or traffic signals. See, being online helps them make better decisions and work more efficiently. So there's a fire truck or an ambulance. And in emergencies, they can even react to signals or ambulances or police cars and move out of the way or stop safely. All these features make self-driving cars smarter and better at handling the changes on the road. We had a fire truck coming by, and I just pulled over very eloquently and said, hey, we gotta yield to this emergency vehicle. Okay, so it says finding a spot to pull over. Governments around the world are trying to figure out the best rules for these special cars. And one big question is, who is responsible if a self-driving car crashes? Is it the car company? Is it the software makers? Or the person who owns the car? The person who was sitting in that Uber self-driving car was supposed to be monitoring. But what happens when there is no human in the car? It's really impressive that very narrow two-way street where it's very difficult for two cars to be on the same street. So it doesn't always technically follow the rules of traffic. Like it will go on to another lane. But if you think about it, so do humans. So that's probably a good thing. In the US, regulations on self-driving cars are overseen by NHTSA at the federal level. It gives guidelines for automated driving systems, and they focus on ensuring safety for these vehicles. But these regulations are still developing, and states also have their own set of rules too. It's really fascinating the vision it has. Like you see the things that it can see up ahead or on the left or right, and it's like, how can the cameras detect that there's a person so far up ahead on the left or down the road that there's like a garbage truck coming, things like that. It's really fascinating. So what does this mean for the future of drivers? Let's look to Wuhan in China that has self-driving cars everywhere. So these are done by Baidu, and 5 years ago, I actually saw them testing these and got to ride one. So we're making turns and notice, just like a roller coaster, no hands. By the end of the year, there will be 1,000 of these cars on the streets of Wuhan. With China's insanely fast adoption of new technology, this is expected to cause huge changes. See, these rides here can be as cheap as 50 cents, and many people are already saying they will never need to buy a car again. Meanwhile, one person commented on a viral video that driving schools, road inspectors, and taxis are all going to shut down. The rise of self-driving cars could have big effects on jobs in the economy. See, it's bringing in new jobs in engineering and computer science, but at the same time, it will mean way fewer jobs for truck drivers and taxi drivers. Self-driving cars could also help the economy by cutting down on traffic jams and letting people use their time more efficiently. But to make these benefits happen, we'll need to invest a lot in things like roads and city planning and just the general adoption of new technology. So this is a bit frustrating. I just ordered this car, but I can't communicate and say, hey, it's me. It says, no, the pickup is over there. So I got to move out of the way so he can go, and then I have to walk and get in the car. Maybe the next version of it is going to have facial recognition or something. So I can be like, hey, it's Upton. Oh, God, don't make me walk up this hill. Ugh. All right, I am not going to tip. So now it's saying, hey, we'll wait for 2 minutes. It's time to get in the car. It's actually quite dystopian to see these driving cars without humans inside them, and the backdrop of San Francisco, which has such a crisis of mental illness and homeless people, it's really, really weird to see something like so much from the future, but then the city is struggling with this big crisis and this big problem. And same with Los Angeles too, which also has Waymo now. Something I find quite interesting is that the digital screen on the top of the Waymos can actually be used for anything. So it says my initial before I get in. So I can be sure that, hey, this car is for me. The screen on top of the car, sometimes if the Waymo is at a stoplight or a red light, it'll just show a pedestrian. Now, why is it doing that? It's actually serving a purpose of providing value to, let's say, people behind the car or either other pedestrians on the street. It's saying, hey, this car has stopped because there's a pedestrian in front of it. And that's really cool when you think about it, because right now cars, you know, when you put on your brakes, there's red lights to inform the person behind you, hey, I'm slowing down, so you better slow down too. But now you think about what screens can do for the future of driving and actually provide potentially more value. Now, how important is that? That's probably up for debate. It can be a little bit annoying, like we pulled into the parking lot and it's like, all right, I want to go to this building, let me out. It doesn't understand voice commands, so it kind of went through the whole parking lot, made a right turn, and now it's letting me out. So sometimes little things like that might be a little frustrating. But what happens if you stand in front of a self-driving car? Will it honk? Will it move? What's it going to do? For every second I stand here, it's actually costing the company money, because this is a moment that it could be used to pick up other passengers. My cameraman is also blocking the other lane. So let's just see how smart this thing is. I'm actually surprised it hasn't honked yet. It might be calling rider support. So it's been a few minutes now. Okay, you win. So now you know what the future of self-driving cars is going to look like, but I want to know, what do you think? Is this a future, and how is it going to impact jobs and the economy?
Oh, hope you found that amusing a bit.
Yeah, it's amusing, but
Let me just say that my son and daughter-in-law were in San Francisco earlier this year, and they actually took a ride in one of these, and they quite enjoyed it. And it wasn't that expensive either. So let me just see if I can escape.
Why did it run over that woman?
I can see there would be major changes to a lot of other things. For example, parking at people's places, parking in the city. You wouldn't have to provide all these big buildings for parking, and there wouldn't be all these disputes about people parking in the street outside their houses if they could just get one of these driverless vehicles, you know, at a reasonable price. So I think there would be big, if it actually worked and it was economic, then I think we would see more changes than just the fact that you could hop in something that was driverless.
Sure. There are lots of dimensions, some technical and some social and some economic and some regulatory. And there's a lot, I think there's a long way to go before we can see it down in North Terrace or in William Street, unfortunately. I can see it starting with traveling between cities, you know, long motorways and stuff. That should be too hard to organize. And I think the technology exists. And actually, I mean, in Adelaide here, we've had a technology company that started over 2 decades ago working on these things. So it's not just the technology, it's everything coming together and people accepting it and having the regulations and having all the
I can
other
imagine
requirements.
I
Sorry?
can imagine that the Chinese will set the standard for this. As they say, it's in Wuhan, which I've actually been to Wuhan before COVID, and it's a pretty big city, and you know, the Chinese will get this worked out, and we'll be sitting around wondering why on earth we haven't done this or done that. Same with a lot of technologies, I think.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I guess in the immediate future, we are seeing all modern cars getting some of the features that these clever cars, self-driven cars have, and it is certainly improving the safety of vehicles that we're driving, and hopefully reducing fatalities and other things. Okay, so much for autonomous vehicles. I'm just trying to see if, oh yeah, there's This is something else that we could talk about, but I think we're running short of time, and I'll let you watch this later. Certainly, the idea of having our parcels delivered by air will be coming sooner than later, and I think I've heard mutterings about it actually being trialed all around.
I
So
think
that's
there's already a row about drones delivering parcels.
Yeah.
Maybe we could save all this extra stuff for another meeting, Wasim. What do you think?
I think we've done most of it, and if I can share this with you, you can enjoy looking at it if you so wish, or if it is a particular thing. I think I've come to almost to my last slide.
Right.
That's the parcel delivery business, and this certainly this is going to happen with electric cars and with drones and so on. And I just thought I'd throw this in. The fact now is that we do have a lot of charging stations in South Australia, and these are the charging stations around us. And there's no reason why we should be worried about having electric vehicles in terms of being able to charge them, even on long journeys. And I know people who have gone all the way to far north Queensland in electric vehicles, let alone driving around the States or doing some long, other traveling. But having said that, we shouldn't discount the role being played by hybrids for the people that want them in reducing the emissions. But we're getting to the stage now. We have lots of charging stations, but also we have, I believe at last count, there was more than 100 electric vehicle models available in Australia, and the price has come down as low as 30K for a brand new electric vehicle, thanks to the Chinese companies and them competing right here in Australia. So, and certainly there's nothing to fear about the life of the battery or the fact that they're not reliable or anything like that. How many cars we need, that's something certainly we need to think about. Are we going to, in the next 20 years, end up with one car per family and the rest being called at will? Do we need a private vehicle at all? Why don't we just call one when we need it? I think this is happening in a big way, and it is going to happen in our lifetime, including some of the autonomous vehicles, but I'm a little more worried